Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to declare a conflict.
State your potential conflicts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do own a business and have wonderful employees, and I'm grateful for that. A number of the issues that are discussed, including political issues that come across this floor, specifically impact my bottom line and therefore deserve communication with my employees. They are critical discussions that are worthy to have with my wonderful employees.
So noted for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues,
To the bill now.
To the bill.
To the bill.
I rise in strong opposition to Senate Bill 519. There are numerous great arguments about why this bill, why Senate Bill 519 is both unnecessary, overachieving, unfair, and from my perspective as an employer, outrageous. If you will remember, I cautioned this very body on opening day that we ought to be careful, very careful, not to put haste before quality. Well, colleagues, this bill was hastily put together and is now being shoved at or down the throat of employers. As the owner of my business in Douglas County, I will be impacted. As the owner of his restaurants, the representative from Salem, Turner, Almsville, he'll be impacted. As the owner of his business in Beaverton, or as the owner of his business in the 100 Valleys of the Umpqua, he will be impacted, as will every other one. What many people may not realize is that the three of us and every other one mentioned, along with every single member of this body, will be affected because this bill even applies to the Legislative Assembly. Even applies to the Legislative Assembly. Seriously. We have this memo where the Legislative Council says that Senate Bill 519 seems to apply to the Legislative Assembly. Read it. Seems to apply to the Legislative Assembly. The bill says it applies to campaigns for legislation, a nuance which is going to get tweaked in House Bill 3507, which, by the way, is a cleanup bill necessary because of the aforementioned hasty, sloppy nature in which Senate Bill 519 is being brought to us. But this bill, even with that fix, applies to campaigns for measures. We're going to have that talk here. Campaigns for measures. Does that mean legislative referrals? Does that mean referendums on legislatively passed measures? What about a ballot measure that directly impacts the way the legislature operates? What about a ballot measure calling for annual sessions? Have we had that conversation here? Will we have that conversation here? You bet. How many people here in the chamber, besides the few that I've mentioned, really know what it's like to not get paid? How many people really know what it's like to not get paid? Not get paid because business isn't good. Not get paid because they might be overregulated. Not get paid because we're in an economic recession. Simply put, they have their assets on the line upon which they have to have a return to get paid and to employ people. How many people in the chamber know that? How many of you have actually walked in the door and said, because my business isn't performing, you or you or you, you're going to have reduced hours. You or you or you, in fact, don't have a job and don't have benefits today. The more issues we put on employers like this, the deeper we find ourselves in the hole that we're in. How many of the people in this room today know what it's like to have their entire net worth invested in their business? Invested in something that, if it's not successful, not only impedes your personal ability to proceed, but obviously impedes your ability to employ others. The small business owners that I'm talking about in our state today are the very ones that take the risks every day to drive the economy we hope to be successful, to drive the economy that puts the dollars into the system that runs our local communities in this state.
Representative Matthews yields.
Thank you, Representative. These small owners take that risk, and I want to ask, is it right of us to limit what they can do in the workplace, to limit the conversation they can have as this bill does? I can't be supportive of that. Would any one of you want to look at a mill owner or a timber company and say to them, you can't talk about a measure or a bill that prohibits logging? The very industry which employs them, you don't want them to be able to have that conversation? No. They got to come and have the conversation. Would it be right for us to say to a private restaurant or hotel owner, you can insist on having a conversation about minimum wage and how that legislation or rule affects their business, their bottom line, or their ability to keep those folks employed there? Employed? No. We don't want to do that. I'm not sure everybody remembers. But check the latest report, because I'm going to keep talking about this over and over and over. We're suffering with record unemployment. Currently 12.4%, highest since we've been tracking it, second in the nation only to Michigan. And in those times, I've challenged this body, let's do something positive for the business community, not continue to put impediments in front of them that cause even more failure in business or more loss of jobs. It's unconscionable to tell private employers they can't have a conversation with employees about potentially disastrous, absolutely unfriendly to business legislation. If they'd like to hear about it, they need to know. Employers and employees have a right to know about these regulations. They do have a right to know about what a new fee, how a new fee might impact them, how a new tax might impact them. They certainly have a right to encourage their employees one way or another to be active or not, to have the conversation and say, if we will be impacted in a negative basis, you need to know this. If you're working in the timber industry and your industry is being harmed, you need to know that. We had this similar conversation in the last cycle. I was beside myself then as an employer to think that this body would move in that direction then. I'm certainly beside myself again that in the face of the horrible economy, record unemployment, record underemployment, that we would once again put an impediment in front of the very people who put at risk the assets that drive Oregon's economy. Colleagues, I urge a strong no vote on this Senate Bill 519.